Hello, everyone. Today is March the 13th, 2026. This is Wes Fryer in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is an update that I am sharing for the Heal Our Culture project. This is actually the second update I've shared like this, although I've shared other videos, and it's working out to share this about 2 weeks after my first one. And if you're not familiar with the Heal Our Culture project, this is something I started a few years ago. And the basic idea is that we need to act rather than as culture warriors, we need to act as culture healers in a variety of ways. So, in tonight's update, I'd like to share some ways that I have found hope in the last week. I think sharing ways that we find hope and joy is extremely important. And I want to secondly talk about Pray As You Go, which is a fantastic website that I've used as a meditation site or a meditation source for probably about 10 years, but it is celebrating its 20th anniversary, and I want to highlight it for you because that may be something helpful to you. I want to talk a little bit about the war in Iran. I'll amplify a post that I wrote on another Substack that I maintain called Resist and Heal. I want to talk about how I've used AI to help me hopefully respond with more kindness and sensitivity to some very polarizing comments that I've received on Facebook recently. Again, that might be something that is helpful to you. I want to talk briefly about something I could talk hours and hours for or about, and that is this trip that my wife and I took this last Saturday, a week ago, down to Lansford, South Carolina, and to an area where a plantation called Tivoli was, and talk a little bit about what I call hard history. And lastly, I want to talk about unchristian nationalism and recommend to you a podcast, a documentary video film, and also a book. Finding hope. It is so important that we find hope in this time. I don't know where you are in time and space watching this. It is literally 10:17 p.m. tonight on Friday before spring break. I'm a middle school classroom teacher, and we're about to have spring break. And I've actually not shared content and things on social media in the last week, in part as a fast for Lent. I'm not doing that for all of Lent. It's actually been really good for me. But one thing that I did share on Wednesday when I got the video was a recording of a presentation that I had shared last week for this wonderful Thrive conference, Thrive United for Democracy and Global Action. And I'll talk about the presentation at the end. But boy, it is so wonderful to connect with other people who are passionate about supporting self-determination and representative democracy, supporting education, supporting shared values of really kindness and shared humanity, respect for each other, human rights, the list goes on. But this was a really wonderful conference, and I only had time to watch a very small amount of the conference when it actually happened. The good news is all of the sessions were recorded, and a number of them, all the keynotes are available on YouTube. And so if you go to the website thriveedu.substack.com, one of the things that we talked about, because I have played a very small role in helping with this conference, is that it would be great to blog this conference, to share as we watch these videos or we have watched these videos and we respond to them and we provide opportunities to have interaction around the really awesome ideas that are part of the conference. So I found great hope in that. And I would also just say that Zoom and also, I guess, they're just different video conferences, Google Meet, other conferences that I've done in the last 2 weeks have brought me so much hope. I am very thankful and blessed to be able to collaborate with a variety of different folks, many in education and many outside of education. Our Indivisible team for Indivisible Charlotte, the Media Education Lab that I'm a part of, other projects that I'm working on. I'm trying to bring representatives and volunteers of the It Happened Here the Charlotte Remembrance Project to our school. They'll be dedicating one of the memorial markers for this project, which is part of the Equal Justice Initiative by Brian Stevenson, if you're not familiar with that. It's a very powerful project, and there were two very unfortunately well documented lynchings that occurred in Charlotte, North Carolina, and next month in April they're going to be dedicating the first of two. One of them occurred where Panther Stadium is today, and the other one occurred where Reedy Park, which is a Charlotte-Mecklenburg Park, is. And it may sound odd to talk about all of this and finding hope, but this is history we need to talk about. It is history we need to understand. And we live in very polarized times where it can seem, if you listen to the voices in mainstream media and maybe in some social media that you may follow, that there's just a lot of hate and vitriol, and there's not love and kindness and care and concern. And I'm here to tell you, there is. We're out here. And it's just really inspiring to collaborate with others that are brought together around common purpose. And so I want to encourage you to find that hope as well and share that hope with others. Let me talk about pray as you go. For over 10 years, probably something like 12, now 14, I don't know, maybe 15 years. It's been a while. I've had a wonderful opportunity to participate in a great program called Spiritual Directions. And I probably need to say this during every update. Heal Our Culture is not a religious or a faith-based initiative. I have faith in Jesus and follow him and have been a lifelong Presbyterian and Christian. But Heal Our Culture is about becoming a healer of our culture, irrespective of your context or background or situation. For me, in my situation, I have been on a real journey my whole life, I think, in terms of faith and religion. Sometimes people wonder, do I just have the faith that I have, the beliefs that I have because of the family that I was in or because of my circumstances and my environment? And undoubtedly, environment plays a huge role. And I've gone through a whole variety of questioning and things throughout my life. But one of the really important things that in the last, like I said, 10 to 15 years has been important has been trying to do daily meditation. And this project is 20 years old. It's celebrating its anniversary this year. It just had, I think, last week, its 20th. It was the anniversary of its founding 20 years ago. And so it is a free website. It is an app. It's available for iPhone and Android. You can just go to prayasyogo.org, and it is from the Jesuits of Britain. And they are usually about 12 to 15 minutes long. It has some music. It has a Bible verse that is usually repeated. It has some questions. It's an opportunity to meditate. And on Saturdays, there is what's called the Daily Examen. And this comes from St. Ignatius, who I have learned a little bit about. And it is very contemplative. And what you're encouraged to do in the examen and also in just the entire spiritual directions program is look for how God is at work in your life. Where do you see God at work? And that's what a spiritual director does when you meet with them is they help you reflect on your past week, the past month, and basically look for God. So, this is fantastic. I even though things are really crazy and I'm going to be going to bed soon because I'm really trying to work on my sleep and my wellness, I feel a peace and I feel a calm. And I think part of that is because I'm really trying to stay well and it's really hard to do. But this has been something that's helped me and maybe it could help you as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about war in Iran. I think 2 weeks ago, it was 2 weeks ago tomorrow on Saturday, we learned that our president, our 47th president, had initiated a war with Iran. And while there have been many presidents since World War II who have initiated some kind of military action, including very violent armed conflicts against groups and nations, in the past, we've had presidents that have tried to have some international cooperation and they've tried to respect international law. And I believe that the war that we have in Iran, first off, let me say the regime in Iran is horrible. They are horribly violent. They are terrible. They have killed in the past, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, I think something like 5 to 6,000 people who were protesting. But the United States of America should respect international law, and we've basically thrown it out the window now under this current administration. The Secretary of Defense has rejected having limitations on rules of engagement, on trying to limit civilian deaths. About 175, mainly children, were killed by a Tomahawk missile that the United States launched in the early part of the war that were at a school. There's over 1,000 folks that have been killed now in Iran. But like, this is a war of aggression by the United States. Under the United Nations Charter, which has governed the international order, it has exerted a strong influence on the international order since the conclusion of hostilities in World War II in 1945. Countries are allowed to defend themselves, but you are not allowed to just go attack another country and take over its land. It was unfortunate that President Barack Obama allowed Russia to just take over parts of Ukraine, and we have ongoing wars now in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Gaza Strip, in the Holy Land, and now in Iran. It is terrible that we have this open-ended war, that we do not know what the objectives are. The government has said things like, we're here to destroy Iran's nuclear stockpile, but that was supposedly destroyed a year ago when we bombed them. Regime change, but then they backed off of that. Now it's missiles. I really think that unfortunately we have people in power that want to exert power and they want to keep power. They want to project power. And they certainly wouldn't want the United States to focus on other issues like the spending of $20 billion right now on what are being called detention centers, but which are in effect concentration camps. It's extremely horrible that this is happening in the United States. The Epstein files reveal terrible things about our leaders, to include our president, who is, of course, a convicted felon. And I think that this is an unfortunate distraction, which is leading to a tremendous loss of human life and also incredible expenditures. And there's no sign of when this is going to be over. So, in addition to the Heal Our Culture project, I do post and share things, usually, not this past week, but usually in a variety of places. And one of those is a project that I call Resist and Heal. While the focus of Heal Our Culture is, again, being a culture healer, I think that in order to move forward in what you could term an authoritarian regime and is increasingly acting like a fascist regime here in the United States of America, we have to resist. And we have to resist through peaceful means and legal means. And we have to try and exercise the rights that we have as citizens. And we have to try to strengthen the institutions we have, because it ain't over. And there's a whole lot of history of resistance that we have in the United States. And this is our time. This is our time to resist. So I want to just read for you a post that I wrote on March 12th, and I titled this "Illegal War with Iran is an Immoral Dumpster Fire." And I said, Amen to this. This is a quotation by an Iranian. His name is Eitan Maborek. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Maborak. And the article that was posted on March the 2nd by Qasim Rashid is called "What Iranians Think About the U.S.-Israel War on Iran." And so this is what Eitan said. He said, "The American people should demand a policy that puts human life and the rule of law above the president's thirst for war. Iran's future must be decided by Iranians themselves, not by American bombs or sanctions that starve families, empty hospital shelves, and crush the very civil society we claim to support. The same principle applies here at home. America's future must be decided by the American people, and Congress must finally act as our constitutional check on a rogue president who has no authority to unilaterally drag us into another catastrophic, illegal war. When a president orders strikes that kill civilians and hit essential infrastructure, he is not, quote, protecting anyone. He is committing war crimes on the bloody backpacks of Iranian schoolgirls and in the arms of terrified parents rushing newborns out of darkened hospitals. Americans should be crystal clear in our demands: no war with Iran, an end to collective punishment through broad sanctions, a return to real diplomacy and humanitarian relief, and strict compliance with U.S. and international law so that both Iranians and Americans can fight for their own futures without bombs falling from the sky in their name. So I want to be clear that I in no way support the horrifically violent and repressive and authoritarian regime which has ruled Iran since 1979. And maybe in a later update, I'll share stories about growing up in Columbus, Mississippi for a couple years when the Iranian hostage crisis happened in 1979, and the Iranian friends that I had when I was in fourth and fifth grade, and that experience when they I'm telling the story now, but when they had to move on to base into our alert facility because their house was being, one of their houses was set on fire, and then they had to go back to Iran. I have some connection to Iran, and it is a complex situation. It is not a simple binary. But here is what is very clear, and that is that we have an illegal war of aggression that the United States of America started with Iran. We don't live in an international order that like condones the Minority Report, right? If you watch that Tom Cruise movie, I don't know what year Minority Report came out, but they were anticipating the crimes that others would commit. And so they were going to arrest and imprison and punish folks for future crimes. Iran has had a nuclear program and Iran has missiles, but they had not launched an offensive strike. There are all kinds of things that they've supported in terms of exporting terrorism. It's a bad regime, but there was not a provocation that happened for this conflict. So, anyway, I would encourage you to follow my Resist and Heal Substack. And we need to continue to speak out against this regime that we have here in the United States. And we need to speak out for values that we care about, like human rights, like the rule of law, like checks and balances. Okay, one of the foundations of the US Constitution is limits on power. And the founders of our country, flawed as they were, as we all are, understood that unchecked power is evil, and we have power that risks being unchecked today, and powerful people that don't want to be checked and limited. And this war in Iran is an example of some of the things that they do, and they are doing with this power that they feel is unchecked. Congress needs to freaking step up and do their job, because we have three branches of government, and when one or more of those branches stop doing their job, we stop having a representative democracy. And that is where we are today. But there is hope, and we have elections that are coming, and I hope that we'll be able to have those elections and vote in them. Let me talk about AI comment help. So I switched over from primarily using ChatGPT as my personal AI assistant a few months ago. And I now use primarily Claude, which I pay $20 a month for Claude Pro. And then I also use Gemini Pro, especially for images. It's just been fantastic. And this is a moving target, right? The AI platforms are constantly improving and iterating and changing. I don't know about you, but I have had the experience multiple times of being involved, being a recipient of some very vitriolic and polarizing comments on social media. And I received a couple of these in the past couple weeks, actually 2 weeks ago. And so before I responded, I actually used Claude in this case to try and help me craft a message, which in this case I wanted to be sensitive and not confrontational, but also the thing I was speaking about was an anti-racism council that I'm a part of at our church, and the reasons why I have found that I I benefit from the opportunity to deepen my understanding of what the world is like and the experiences of people of color, and especially some of my African American brothers and sisters. I'm an advocate for being in proximity with all kinds of different folks and trying to understand where other people are coming from, and trying to have humility and be sensitive to the fact that my world and the things that I see, it's not everyone else's experience. So that was helpful. Claude helped me. I'm not going to share the quotes here, but I'm going to tell that story because that might be something that helps you. Let's talk about hard history. Last Saturday, my wife and I went down to South Carolina. It's only about an hour away from us. And you can go to the Lansford Canal. This was built from 1810, I think, to about 1825, something like that. And the history here is absolutely fascinating. I've got a link in all of this. I'll put a link to this slideshow in this video. I'll be sharing this video directly on my Heal Our Culture Substack, but also on YouTube. And wherever I'm sharing this, I'll include the link so you can go to this. But our family learning blog, which we've had for years, is learningsigns.speedofcreativity.org. And I went ahead, this was a family trip, and posted about this. But it was so amazing because I went to Egypt you can watch the video. I did a longer video about this reflecting on it, but it was probably 8 or 9 years ago I was in Egypt. And of course, Egypt has been a civilization for thousands of years. But why do we know so much about the Egyptian civilization that's so old? It's because of the stone, and it's because of things written and painted on stone. The plantation, which was called Tivoli, of the man who had a 3,000-acre plantation at this time, and who almost certainly had the enslaved Africans build this canal, which I guess actually it operated for 15 years, but because the railroad finally came, but it took about 2 years to build. I'm gonna get my facts mixed up. Anyway, it is just fascinating. And the history here and the report and the way I ended up using Notebook LM to summarize this historical archaeological research, because in 1865, this plantation, Tivoli, was burned to the ground. And there is not any visible evidence of this today in this location. But the ways in which the archaeologists and the historians pieced this together, and they used different technologies, and then the stories of those that built the walls, the invisible history. It's something that's important. And I would call this hard history, confronting the history of not just racism, but colonialism and the enslavement of our fellow human beings by predominantly Europeans, but European Americans. I'm talking too much. I would encourage you to watch the video. It was really quite an experience, and I want to continue to work on discussing and sharing hard history. This is actually an important part of Heal Our Culture, and if and when I have a chance to write this as a book project, there's going to be a whole chapter on hard history. Let's talk about unchristian nationalism finally. I'm not going to say Christian nationalism anymore. I'm going to talk about unchristian nationalism, because this movement, which some people term Christian nationalism, and I will call unchristian nationalism, is not about Christianity. It is not about Jesus Christ. It is about power, and it is about people who have co-opted literally millions of people and swept folks up and confused them and thought that somehow Jesus and God wants us to elevate the nation over Jesus and basically worship the flag and worship a leader and have false idols. It is heresy. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm probably not going to surprise you by this if you have read about Christianity, but there have been heretics and heresies throughout the 2,000 plus years that we have had Christianity on the planet. The Crusades were incredibly misguided heresy. I do not believe that Jesus was asking folks in the Middle Ages to go kill Arabs and Muslims and retake Jerusalem. Colonialism and in chattel slavery, these things that have been quote unquote justified by the Bible, there are great heresies. So I want to recommend three things to you, and you can get these links again from the slides. I'll try to include these links specifically so you can just directly go to them in the comments for wherever you're seeing this. But there's a wonderful podcast that my wife recommended to me by Kate Bowler, and she is at the Duke Divinity School, and her podcast is called Everything Happens. And on March 3rd, she had a great panel episode discussion called The New Shape of American Religion with Ross Douthat and Molly Worthen. It is fantastic. And putting the pieces together of what the freak is going on with our country, what's happening with religion and faith, what's happening specifically with Christianity, and these folks that seem to be advocating for such brutality against our neighbors, right? Jesus calls us as followers to love our neighbors, to take care of the widow and the orphan and the stranger, the immigrant. Like these are really clear mandates in the Gospels. So that's a good podcast. I'll also recommend a 2024 documentary, which I watched recently called God and Country. Jamar Tisby is in this. I got a recommendation of this from him on his Substack. And if you don't follow his Substack, it's excellent. And again, this really can help put pieces together because this stuff has been going on for a long time. The religious right and those that have really injected politics into Christian religion and faith, it's not something new. It's been going on for a long time, but it really is coming into full flower. And it's obviously a bit, in my view, it's a very bitter and poisonous flowering that we're seeing this manifested. And so to better understand it, it's really good to listen to different kind of media. And so the third thing is this book by Tim Alberta. I read this over the summer, and it's called The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory: American Evangelicals in an Age of Extremism. And Tim actually grew up in Michigan in a Presbyterian family. His father was a longtime Presbyterian pastor, and it is an excellent book, again, helping us better understand what is happening, but then also, I think, considering how we can move forward. I want to encourage you to join me in advocacy. If you've watched this video to this point, yay, I'd love to know about it. You can reach out and let me know. The Heal Our Culture project is something that I feel called to do. And part of that, I think, is building community both online and in person, sharing trusted voices. And that's part of what I'm trying to do through these video updates. Healing personally, because many of us have scars and wounds and things that we have endured or we've experienced. Healing is so important, and we got to figure out how to heal ourselves. But as a follower of Jesus, I believe God is the healer, and I want to be a channel and an instrument of that. But healing, there's all kinds of ways it happens. It's important. And then resisting cooperatively. And that's where resist and heal comes in. So you can find links to the different Substacks and places where I share content on westfriar.com/advocacy. You can also access this website that I vibe coded a few months ago, and it's just news.westfriar.com. And among other things, that takes all of the newsletters that I subscribe to on my personal email account, but it puts it into a feed that you can filter. And it also has links to videos like this that I share, cooking stuff that I do, other things. So check it out. And then lastly, the video of my presentation from last week is about 22 minutes long, and my presentation was called Reclaiming Our News Feeds. And this is actually a project I've been working on for over 10 years, named different things like discovering good ideas. We've got to take assertive control over news and not just be the pawns of algorithms that in many cases want to feed us rage bait and probably get us pretty upset. Yeah, we need to figure out how to move beyond that. So that is my update for the 13th of March, 2026. I hope that you are finding ways to maintain your hope, to find joy, to share the joy that you find, because even in the midst of difficulty and suffering, there are lots of things to celebrate. There's lots of things to be hopeful about, and part of the way we do that is by living in community with each other. So I hope you have a good day, a good week ahead, and I hope that you find ways to be a culture healer in your community and with those that you interact with instead of a culture warrior. Take care.